the one who breaks the darkness with a liberating light. Praise the one who frees the prisoners, turning blindness into sight.
Welcome to the Daily Bite. I'm your host, Pastor Steve Andrews. Let us read Nehemiah chapter 6. Now when Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem the Arab and the rest of our enemies heard that I had built the wall and that there was no breach left in it, although up to that time I had not yet set up the doors and the gates, Sanballat and Geshem sent to me, saying, Come, and let us meet together at Hakkephirim in the plain of Ono. But they intended to do me harm, and I sent messengers to them, saying, I am doing a great work, and I cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and come down to you? And they sent to me 4 times in this way, and I answered them in the same manner. In the same way Sanballat for the 5th time sent his servant to me with an open letter in his hand. In it was written, It is reported among the nations, and Geshem also says it, that you and the Jews intend to rebel. That is why you are building the wall, and according to these reports you wish to become their king. And you have also set up prophets to proclaim concerning you in Jerusalem, There is a king in Judah. And now the king will hear of these reports. So now come, and let us take counsel together. Then I sent to him, saying, No such things as you say have been done, for you are inventing them out of your own mind. For they all wanted to frighten us, thinking their hands will drop from the work and it will not be done. But now, O God, strengthen my hands. Now when I went into the house of Shemaiah, the son of Delaiah, the son of Mehetabel, who was confined to his home, he said, Let us meet together in the house of God within the temple. Let us close the doors of the temple, for they are coming to kill you. They are coming to kill you by night. But I said, Should such a man as I run away? And what man such as I could go into the temple and live? I will not go in. And I understood and saw that God had not sent him, but that he had pronounced the prophecy against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. For this purpose he was hired, that I should be afraid and act in this way and sin, and so they could give me a bad name in order to taunt me. Remember Tobiah and Sanballat, O my God, according to these things that they did, and also the prophetess Noadiah and the rest of the prophets who wanted to make me afraid. So the wall was finished on the 25th day of the month Elul, in 52 days. And when all our enemies heard of it, all the nations around us were afraid and fell greatly in their own esteem, for they perceived that this work had been accomplished with the help of our God. Moreover, in those days the nobles of Judah sent many letters to Tobiah, and Tobiah's letters came to them, for many in Judah were bound by oath to him, because he was the son-in-law of Shechaniah the son of Ara, and his son Jehohanan had taken the daughter of Meshullam, the son of Berechiah, as his wife. Also they spoke of his good deeds in my presence, and reported my words to him. And Tobiah sent letters to make me afraid. This is the word of the Lord. Today's text sees not only the completion of the wall, but also all of this drama that is surrounding that situation, and the political ploys of the people. So we have the enemies reported to us again. We met them before in the book, Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem, and all the others. They have heard there's no breach left in the wall, so there's nowhere left for them to get in and attack. The gates aren't finished yet, but the wall itself is complete. So they send messengers over to Nehemiah to get him to leave Jerusalem, come out into the open. Ono, the plain of Ono, is about 30 miles to the northwest of Jerusalem. So come out here in the open. It's, if Sanballat really is living in Samaria at the time, then that's 40 miles roughly to the north of Jerusalem. So this is a lot closer to him and his home than it is to Nehemiah's. Well, it's not Nehemiah's home. It's a temporary place for him as he does this work on the wall. Nehemiah acknowledges they intended to do him harm. They sent messengers 5 times all the way to Jerusalem, but they didn't actually come to Jerusalem themselves. They were trying to draw him out. Nehemiah saw through that ploy, that trick, and he continued to refuse it. His reasoning is fair enough. I mean, I'm doing a great work. I can't come down. Why should I stop doing the work that is beneficial to God's people just to come and meet with you. And they don't give him a reason until the fifth messenger comes, and then we get the words that are in his letter. So Sanballat sends these words to Nehemiah that we see in verses 6 and 7. It is reported among the nations, and Geshem also says it. So we've got gossip, right? Except for we don't actually. None of this is true. Nehemiah is going to see right through that too. So the rumors, the gossip that's going around is that you Jews intend to rebel. So you're building a wall to defend yourselves. You've set yourself up as king. You've even made new prophets for yourself that are saying that you're the king in Judah. The next king of Judah, by the way, is going to be who? Well, the next true king of Judah is going to be Jesus. But there are kings in that land before that. Even King Herod, technically. Anyway, the report, again, saying all this negatively, that they are conspiring to rebel against the king of Persia. And so Sanballat's threat is this: what's the king going to think when he hears all of this? Come, let us counsel together. So he's set up this false premise. None of this stuff is true, but he says, look, this is the situation. We can help you. Let us help you. Again, Nehemiah sees right through it. A question you can ask your kids on this one if you want. Remember the king, Artaxerxes? How does the king actually feel about Nehemiah? How does he view this work? See if you can remember from a few days ago what we read at the beginning of the book in chapter 2, as the king actually is the one who sent Nehemiah to do this work. And the king believes that Nehemiah is a trusted servant and is willing to send money to help the people of Jerusalem and Judah. So a very different picture than what Sanballat is throwing forward. The goal of all of this is to get them to stop working on the wall, get them to stop trying to finish the wall by frightening them. And instead, Nehemiah prays. He prays to the Lord for the opposite to happen. Instead of us getting scared and weakened, Lord, strengthen our hands that we may finish. We see two prayers from him in this letter, in this chapter. The second's going to be in verse 14, but let's get to that. So the next event, the next happening of the chapter, the paragraph that starts there at verse 10, this is one of the fellow Jews, Shemaiah. I won't go into the names of his father and grandfather because we don't really know those people anyway, but Shemaiah is confined to his home. We're not told why. Illness, injury, punishment for something. He's confined for some reason, and he offers, he tells Nehemiah that there has been a threat against his life, that the enemy is coming in the night and they're going to kill him. So come, let's lock ourselves together in the temple and God will protect you. He doesn't actually say God will protect you, but he does say the house of God, and it's a place where God's presence is among his people. In their mind, the Ark of the Covenant is not there. God's throne is not present. But, that said, what's Nehemiah's response? I mean, he sees again, just as he did with Sanballat before, that this is not actually from God. This is not a good thing. This is a plot against him. But look at his response anyway. Should such a man as I run away? What would it do to the work? What would it do to the people, to their morale as a family, a large family, if their leader, if the head of the family fled in fear? What would happen? Well, the people would panic. They would also falter, and they would give up. And he knows that about the situation. I actually recently heard this. I listen from time to time to the Voice of the Martyrs to learn about persecution of Christians throughout the world. They were telling one about a pastor in Iran not that long ago, and the case is from about 20 years ago, but Pastor Hossein Sudmand, where the threat was put on him that if he did not close his church, if he did not stop teaching people the gospel about Jesus, that they would kill him. And they used his family against him. They tried to show him his family and say, look, you have all of this family. You are a blessed man. Give it up. Reject Jesus. Stop teaching in that name. And you get to go on living and taking care of your family. The groups of other Christians that supported Pastor Sudmand and his sharing of the gospel, they found out about the threats against him, and they offered to get him and his family out of Iran, get them to somewhere safe where they could live and enjoy life together. And Pastor Sudmand, he turned it down and was willing to endure whatever came his way, because what he shared with them was the idea that if he were to give up, if he were to quit, if he were to run, then the people that he had shared the gospel with, they would be harmed by that. To see the leader, to see their spiritual father cower under threats, he thought that would harm them, and so he didn't do it. He remained, and he was executed for that. So he has joined the rank of martyrs under the throne of God. Powerful stuff to consider. So Nehemiah's onto that. He also says, what man such as I could go into the temple and live? Nehemiah is not worthy of it. He's not a priest. It's not his to go into the temple at all. Now, we learn in verse 12 that Tobiah and Sanballat actually hired Shemaiah to do this. So here you have a Jew that's been hired. So inside the city of Jerusalem, you have a Jew living there who's been hired by the enemy from outside to betray the leader of the city. Political ploys. Hired to make him afraid and to act in this way and sin. That might be one to pick up on with your children. What sin is Nehemiah doing if he listens to Shemaiah? I talked about it from a couple of perspectives already. I mean, the idea that he would go into the temple when that's not his to do, that would be a sin. The idea of being a leader and maintaining his responsibility rather than running from it. And this is true for all of us, that the Lord has given us each work to do, and if we refuse to do it, for whatever reason, that's a sin. Our work to do today is to share the gospel. Love your neighbor. Well, love God, love your neighbor. And the best way to love your neighbor is to tell them about Christ and his love for them. So now, verse 14, Nehemiah's second prayer, this time of the chapter, this is also his second prayer against these men, for the Lord to judge them in a way. Tobiah and Sanballat, and not just them, but now these unnamed prophets. I don't know why the prophetess gets named Noadiah. She's not mentioned before. She's not mentioned after. She's mentioned nowhere else in Scripture. But just randomly there, we've got a woman serving as a prophet, a false one, obviously, as are all the unnamed prophets, also false, that are simply trying to tear down the work, tear down the leader, the governor of the people. Then we learn in the next paragraph that the wall was finished on the 25th day of the month of Elul, which would be August, September kind of time frame for us. And it only took 52 days. I say only because they just rebuilt the entire wall of a city. That's impressive work. It's a lot to be done, and they went about it well. I mentioned yesterday that Nehemiah is governor over that area for 12 years. So he's going to have more time there than just the rebuilding of the wall. We're not told specifically when it began, but we get the time of the ending and how long it was, so we could actually calculate back if we wanted to. 52 days from Elul 25 would give us, what? 27 days earlier in the previous month, which may have been then like the second or the third day of what we would think of as July or August. So kind of plotting that out on a calendar, you can see the time of the work. The enemies hear of it, and the nations are afraid. Jerusalem has been rebuilt. Why does that strike fear into them is an interesting question. Well, he answers that. They perceive this work was accomplished with the help of our God. The neighboring nations are not historically ignorant. They know what Jerusalem's history has been before. They know of God's people. They know of King David, for example, historically speaking, and how the Israelites were successful in many military campaigns because their God was with them. And so that does strike some fear into them, the nations around them. Then we get the final note of the chapter, which is more of this political plotting going on. We learn that Tobiah, one of these two major adversaries and in opposition to the building of the wall, Tobiah has positioned himself among the Judaites, among the Jews, very strongly. He has married into the house of one of the heads, one of the clan heads of the people, Shechaniah. He married Shechaniah's daughter. And his son has married the daughter of Berechiah, who was one of the wall supervisors in chapter 3, so another prominent figure. So two prominent men. He married one of their daughters, his son married the daughter of another one. He's got clout among the Jews for this reason. They are bound to him and he to them through marriage. And so what do we see them doing? Well, they're sending letters to each other. Tobiah's word is getting in. They're trying to butter up, I guess in a sense, Nehemiah. They're trying to get Nehemiah to see Tobiah as good when Tobiah isn't. They're trying to give him a false view of him that would weaken him to take whatever plots against him Tobiah has. But they're also spying. They're taking Nehemiah's words and they're reporting them back to Tobiah. All of this Tobiah doing in order to try to cause Nehemiah to fear. And that is another sin that we didn't actually mention when we were talking about sins back in verse 13. To be afraid is a sin. And it's something we probably don't talk about very much today, but it's true. We brought that up in a text just yesterday or the day before, the idea that we are not to be afraid. The only thing we are to fear is God himself. To fear in something in this world is to not trust in God. If I fear getting sick and dying, I don't trust that the Lord is going to rescue me from death. If I fear that my neighbor will get mad at me when I tell them about Jesus, I don't trust that the Lord will still be my Father and that I will still have a family in this place and in the place to come. When I fear that I might lose my job because of my faith, whatever that is, I'm not trusting that the Lord will provide for me and for my family. Can you see that? Fear is the opposite of trust. Another way to say it, though, would actually be that fear is to trust in the other thing. It's to trust in the thing that you're afraid of. So if I fear sharks, I trust that the shark is capable of harming me. When actually, in reality, the shark is not capable of harming me. Even if it were to eat me, I would not really be harmed. I would be with God in paradise. Bigger picture, bigger perspective. Do not fear. It's a lesson that we can see from Nehemiah here in the text. He sees through these plots against him, these things that would cause him to be afraid, and he trusts in God instead. And we see him pray again and again throughout this book.
Let us praise the Word incarnate, Christ whose Son